The entire contents of this podcast and website are based upon the opinions of Tammy Garcia and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended as medical advice. It is intended as a sharing of knowledge and information from the research and experience of Tammy Garcia and her guests. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast, coming to you from our 1890 homestead in Johnstown, Colorado. I'm Tammy, and I want to thank you for joining us. Let's get started and help people feel good so they can do what they love for longer. Thank you so much for joining me on the Naturally Inspired Podcast today. I've had a lot of fun this past week because I have been going through all of the podcasts from 2019 and really listening for the things that stood out for me. It's been an awesome ride so far. We're on, into 20 episodes or more now. And I feel like I'm starting to get the hang of it and really enjoying what I'm learning and getting to know new people and just everything that has come into my life since I've started the podcast has really been pretty exciting. And so I wanted to go back and look at each episode and just revisit kind of the nuggets that I've got out of each episode. And what I came up with that I wanted to share as the new year hits us. And, I know not everybody's into resolutions, and I don't know that I'm into resolutions, but I am into kind of like a clean start. Just kind of reassessing, reflecting, and using the beginning of the year to do that, to just kind of be like, okay, what was working for me last year? What's not working for me? And how am I going to switch it? And the beginning of the year is such a great time to do that just because it's a new year. So you can see how things went in the last 12 months and adjust accordingly. So I came up with the biggest wins and the biggest regrets of 2019. And as I was going through the podcast, it was pretty easy to pick these wins out once I got going. So that's what I'm bringing to you today, is the biggest wins and the biggest regrets of 2019. So we're going to start with the very first episode. Well, I guess I should back up from even there, because why did I start the podcast? I think, many people have heard the story already on why I started the podcast, but if you're a new listener, I can, just do a brief little update for you. So we've had struggles in our family with health for a long time. Different things have come and gone, different seasons of health, I like to say. And we've always tried to resolve those things the best that we can naturally. And through the process, I have just accumulated a lot of information that maybe isn't mainstream. And so I've just had a passion for spreading this knowledge with my family and friends and people I run into. And I always end up talking about natural health to people because, people are looking for solutions to their issues. And sometimes, the traditional medical model just doesn't have that answer that we're looking for. We don't want surgery. We don't want pills. We just, we want to try something else first. And so it just grew as a passion of mine. And as I searched, I'm kind of a podcast junkie. And as I searched for information and podcasts on natural health, I saw a gap in the marketplace. There really wasn't too much out there that I felt like I could listen to on a regular basis. And there's definitely some great health podcasts. I'm not saying that. But some of them are very technical. And if you can handle listening to data points and, mass studies and talking about published papers and, there's great information on that. And I do like listening to that stuff from time to time. But as just an easygoing listening, I'll take nuggets from that podcast. I'll implement that into from that perspective, I couldn't find that. So I was out on a run one day and I came back from the run and I just told Jay, I'm going to start my own podcast. I'm gonna start my own podcast on natural health because, we've learned so much over the years dealing with, my son's respiratory problems. My daughter was premature. My mom had cancer. My mom passed away from cancer. There's things I would do differently there. Um, my own health challenges that I've gone through with nutrient deficiencies and just things that, we've dealt with over the years. I felt like I have enough information that I think I can talk to people who are in the profession and kind of be a conduit for others to relay this information out there. It's not easy to make the decision to go the natural route in health care here in this country because it's not supported. So if you're already paying a healthy premium for your healthcare in the United States, you probably are, especially if you're a business owner like me. You're paying a lot of money every month for not using your healthcare. Basically, you're just trying to stave off, having a penalty for not having healthcare. So you don't even want to go to the doctor because you're paying in addition out of pocket. And maybe a lot of people don't know that. I know, not all of my listeners are inside the US. So, there's some misconceptions when it comes to healthcare, but yes, that is how it works for us. We're business owners. We pay a healthy premium every month, almost $1,200 a month for 4 of us. And that covers nothing until we've hit our $10,000 deductible. So that's a lot. And we never hit our $10,000 deductible. So the way I take advantage of that is if I'm going to pay out of pocket anyway, well, then I'm going to choose how I'm going to treat myself. And so I wasn't getting the answers a lot of times. And actually, quite honestly, the traditional medical model let me down several times with misdiagnoses, especially with my son. And just, prescriptions that they weren't needed. There were, just multiple issues where I really started to question their advice. And so I branched out to find our own functional medicine practitioners and, doing my own research and really taking responsibility for our own health in my family and making decisions, different decisions in diet, different decisions in exercise, and just overall making that switch. And so that's what we do. We have our insurance, but we don't use it. And when we never hit our deductible, thank God. And that's kind of how we roll around here. So I do gather a lot of information about different ailments just as we navigate our way through life. So that's kind of how the podcast came about. I just thought there needs to be more exposure, that there are other options out there. I would absolutely love to see the medical model change in this country, especially when it comes to insurance. I think that we should have the right to treat ourselves how we see fit. We should have the right to treat ourselves, however we want, whatever that may be. Because we have to deal with the consequences. So if we have to deal with the consequences, then we should definitely be responsible for the choices that we make. Anyway, so I'd like to see that. That's kind of part of the podcast as well, is just trying to spread that information so that people become more knowledgeable in the marketplace, because ultimately we vote with our dollars. If we stop paying for medical care, traditional medical care that doesn't treat us the way we want to be treated, then they'll have to come up with something else. Same thing in our food industry. If we stop making choices that make us sick when it comes to buying our food, then they'll be forced to make food that does not make us sick. So this is just my little contribution to that movement. And it's a naturally inspired movement. And that's what the podcast has been all about. So that number one win in 2019 was starting the podcast, having the idea to start the podcast, and then following through with doing the podcast has been, I think, my number one win for 2019. And then, of course, all the people and the guests that I've had on the podcast have made a big impact on my life. Number one, the first episode I ever did was Linda Skluzak. And Linda was an amazing guest. because she was the epitome of what can happen when you take responsibility for your own health and you do your own research and you listen to your body and you have a little faith that you can navigate through it on your own. Linda, for those of you that don't remember, was diagnosed with lupus, and she suffered with lupus for many, many years. She was on multiple medications, debilitated at times with her lupus. And today, Linda is a competitive bikini bodybuilder, and she has no symptoms of lupus. And so that was an incredible interview. And I think one of the biggest nuggets I got from Linda that day was that she just came to a point in her life where she was experiencing so much pain and disappointment and just feeling so awful where she was at, on all these medications, you know, really owning her lupus diagnosis, and that was her identity. And that became so painful for her that something shifted, and she decided to make a change, because that life was so incredibly painful to her and not serving her anymore. She had no choice but to move on and try something different. So she really defined that for me. When you get, you know, people say all the time, oh, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I mean, that is what she experienced, to the point where she just could not stand it anymore. And that's what drove her to take a different route. And that's when she started pursuing functional medicine. And she had a goal of getting herself off of all the medications and living a healthy life. And she had some great little nuggets that she said. You know, it became so obvious to her once she made that decision that she was going to switch to this different model of trying to pull herself out of this, that she, you know, she said that her disease appeared worse with her medication. At some point, she had that realization that she actually had more foggy headedness. She had more symptoms from the multiple medications she was taking than she did when she, you know, started taking the medication. Right? She was taking the medication to get rid of those symptoms, but then she got her up to so many medications that she was having symptoms from the medication. And I think that's what happens when you put your health into someone else's hands that really isn't in your body, can't experience what's going on, and they're doing their best to try to help you, but there's no possible way for them to get the signals that your body are putting out there. Right? They're only taking your word for how you feel. And so you can't discount that. You can't discount that component that you know your body best. That was a huge thing from her that I learned. Also, just how important it is to realize that the journey of success is not linear. And I love that she admitted that and talked about that quite a bit in the interview, was how, you know, she went off this medication for a little while and she took a nosedive. So she had to go back to it. And it was okay that she went back to it for a little while. She had to work, she had to raise her kids. She relied on it until she pulled it off again, tried it again. And then, you know, maybe she went back on it a little bit again. And so the point is it wasn't linear. It wasn't like, I'm not taking that anymore and this is all fixed now. That's not her journey. And she's very adamant about saying that in the interview. That was not her experience. It was, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. It was this game of kind of back and forth. And I think we don't realize that enough, especially when we're working towards health goals and doing it naturally. The one way I like to describe it is, you know, when you're building your health back, you're taking off a sheet at a time. Like, imagine yourself lying on a bed and you have 25 sheets, thin sheets on you. And as you fill up your bucket with nutrients and minerals and you replace, you know, bad habits with good ones, you take one sheet off and you feel just that much better. And then another sheet off and then you feel that much better. And it's really a progress. It's really like a a progression rather. It's a journey that, you're just getting better as you take each sheet off. That's how I relate to natural health, because when you take a synthetic pill or a medication, the reaction is immediate. You feel better right away. You take an aspirin, it kicks in, the pain is gone. But what we don't realize is the pain, you can't feel the pain, but the issue is still there. So just because you're not feeling the pain doesn't mean that the issue is gone. And so we have somehow in our society correlated when the pain is gone, that the issue is gone. And that's where we kind of get into a little bit of trouble, because we think we don't have an issue anymore. And then that issue, because it's being covered up, the body will continue to try to send you signals and let you know that something's wrong. So it's like a domino effect. Something else eventually is going to fall out because of that issue. And then now you've got two issues. So you're covering up the one issue with the pain relief, and then now you've got another issue, you've got to work on that. And what we do in mainstream medicine is just keep trying to manage those symptoms. Whereas in functional medicine, we try to get to the root of the problem and figure out why that first ailment is there in the first place. So she really covered a lot of that. And it was really fascinating. And she was an awesome person to interview, and she's now a friend. And it was really wonderful and inspiring to watch her grow, and she continues to grow as she goes into this year's competitive season. She's working her tail off again, and she's happy and vibrant, and it's just really an awesome, inspiring story. So that was Linda Skluzak, my very first Naturally Inspired podcast episode. Second episode and second nugget that I want to share today, and we had such great feedback from this one, was Claire Kelway. Claire is a natural or a functional medicine practitioner out of here in Colorado, in Erie. She has a wealth of information because she's been practicing a long time. So she's somebody that I can just talk to forever about natural health, because she just has dealt with so many different clinical experiences, and she specializes in women's health, which is very interesting as well. And so I got lots of information from Claire. But I think one of the greatest things that we learned from Claire on that episode was that you're not your disease. You're not your disease. It's not your lupus, your irritable bowel syndrome, your whatever your ailment is. It's not yours. And the truth of it is that those labels are actually there so that, doctors can make diagnoses and then bill you for them. The insurance company needs to know, okay, well, this is the diagnosis, and it goes through your insurance and you get paid for this. If you have diabetes, you got to start them on metformin or whatever they decide. That's kind of the protocol. And so that's the reason for labels, so that, they can diagnose and then treat in this particular way. But the interesting part that Claire brings in to the episode, on this particular episode, was like, no, because first of all, we're not all the same, right? So to treat somebody exactly the same because they have the same label, everybody's body reacts differently to different things. So that was something new. When you think about it, you think, everyone has diabetes, they got to treat it this way. Boom, 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 boom. Well, not really, because we're all still individuals. Maybe we have some of the same symptoms and we have some of the same dysfunctions going on, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we should all treat it the same way. So that was a big eye opener for me, the way she said that. And that, all that's really happening when your body starts giving you symptoms is that you're having your function is out of balance. And I love the way she said that. It's just that your function is out of balance. And so as a functional medicine practitioner, what she does is works backwards to get your body back to homeostasis. So it's not that, boom, you have this huge diagnosis, now it's over, like you're going to live with this for the rest of your life. Not in functional medicine. Functional medicine, they work like detectives, and they continue to search. Okay, why is the body telling us that? Okay, what's this about? And they kind of follow the hot trail to where the dysfunction is coming from, and they treat the body as a whole. They treat it as a whole. So they get back, they get looking at everything, the mind, the gut, the whole body as a whole, which is another shift that she kind of exposed, was that, when you treat the body as a whole, your body's a system, it works together. So just because you're having a symptom, it doesn't mean, that you need to focus right here on this symptom. Say your shoulder's hurting. This is the problem. This is the problem. This is the problem. Well, there's multiple reasons why you have a dysfunction in your shoulder. Is it because you have, muscular imbalance? Are you overcorrecting? Is something out of alignment? Or do you not have enough nutrients to heal properly in this area? Your body's a whole system. And so when you treat it like a system, then the body can take care of that, instead of, just treating the area. You have to treat the whole body. And that was something new that Claire brought to the table, and was refreshing, because, it's relieving. It's relieving to think, I don't have this disease or this label necessarily. I'm having these symptoms, and I'm not ignoring the symptoms, but I want to find out what's wrong in my system that has caused these symptoms. So it's a totally different perspective than looking at it and in a traditional way. And I love that, because I think it brings more hope into your situation. And you don't have to study other people's cases and think, oh, well, I have the same thing they do, so I'm going to get the same results they are, so this is what I can expect. It's not that way. It's not that way at all. And a different approach at looking at it, I think, can be hugely beneficial to people who are struggling with a specific ailment. In fact, I'd rather not have a diagnosis. I'd rather know what the ailments are, and understand why, the symptoms are, and understand why they're happening, and then work at soothing the body back into homeostasis. Because that's really what it's all about, is when the body's having a reaction, it's out of homeostasis. So what can we do to soothe our body back into homeostasis? I love that. I love Claire. She's really great. And she'll be back again this year, because she's got so much to share. And she's a lot of fun to have on. So she'll definitely be back. And I know we've gotten a lot of feedback about her. So I know people will be very excited that she's coming back on. Okay. Another big nugget, which was, huge for me, because we took the time to develop a transformation system in 2019. And the reason why we did that is because, I'm helping people get on their journey to optimum health. I'm exposing them to education. I'm recommending and promoting different minerals or products that I know can help them in their situation. And, I'm helping them build confidence in themselves to take the information in, and that, hey, yeah, I can help myself. I can feel better, and I can do this. And so one of the things that I really saw in trending with people was, yeah, this is great information, but I have never implemented any of this before. And some people have never really, stuck to a system that helped them achieve a health goal. So that was something I saw, and I was like, whoa, okay, it's great that all this information is there, but we need to teach people how to implement it. So just with that thought, we came up with the Naturally Inspired Transformation System. And I think this has really been beneficial to a lot of people. And it's been a pleasure to get the feedback about it, and see people's results and how they're working within the system. And that was episode number 4. And I think if you want to go back and visit it, now is a great time to do that, because it's the beginning of the year and you're starting out new. So it's a whole transformation wheel. I'm holding it up to the camera for those that are listening. It's a transformation wheel where we go through each segment. The first segment is awareness. And of course, that's where everything starts, right? If you're not aware of what's happening, maybe what's causing you issue, then of course you can't change it. So that's the first part. And then the second part is discover and educate yourself. So you want to really dive into this issue and figure out what you're doing wrong, or what you need to change in order to get yourself on track. So you really dive into whatever issue you're having, learn the information, and educate yourself about what's going on now and what kind of changes you're going to need to make. And then the third section is your vision and your goals. So around this issue, so what do I want this issue to look like in the future? What's my goal? And so you really need to build that. And then the fourth one is building belief. So you really have to look for other people's stories and look for the results that you want in yourself in someone else, so that you can build that belief. Get yourself around a community of people that share your belief and that are supportive, so that you can achieve this, because everybody needs somebody to believe in them. And sometimes we don't believe in ourselves, so we need to borrow someone else's belief for a while before we start on that road and we're like, okay, yeah, I can do this. So that's a big part of it. The fifth one is focus. And that's really, when you get laser focused, like, these are the set of activities I need to do to achieve this goal. And I'm going to focus in on these activities every day. So that's a big part of the wheel and where you are with that. So how consistent are you? How focused are you with that? Immersion is the next one, the next step. And immersing yourself in the process, in this kind of new life habit. So you're not talking about it. You're not just talking about it. You're not just educating yourself about it. You're not just, putting up a vision board and thinking that's my goal and not really, doing anything else but doing that. But you're immersing yourself in it. So you're taking steps in your life to make sure that this is all around you. So you're shopping different, right? You're shopping in the organic section. You are immersing yourself in fitness classes. You are immersing yourself in around like-minded people. You're reading books. You're immersing yourself in books. You're finding mentors in speakers, podcasts, books, groups, different things that, put yourself into that lifestyle, right? You're putting yourself in there, because if you're viewing these goals from the outside, you can't achieve from there. You have to say, maybe you aren't a fitness model yet, but you need to immerse yourself around people who are, if that's your goal, who are already there. You need to immerse yourself in books who are already there. You need to immerse yourself in podcasts that are talking about that, talking about people who have already done that. And that goes for anything. That goes for anything in your life that you want to achieve. If you want that, you have to immerse yourself around people who already do that. And that is such a big part of why people don't stay consistent when they're with their goals. They think they're doing all the things. Okay, I know, but maybe, I know the information. They can tell you the information, but yet they're not doing what they've learned. And that, to me, is such a huge part of this transformation. You have to be brave enough to immerse yourself in it, right? So, like, I didn't know anything about podcasting, not a thing. Jay knows a lot about like anything musical, technology, all that stuff. That's his bag. He's just like intuitive about it. So I knew, oh, well, I'm going to start a podcast. Well, he's my man. He can do all that. So I rely on him for that resource. But I immerse myself in learning about podcasts, right? I joined Facebook groups about podcasts. I looked at conventions about podcasts. I look at marketing people and strategies and how I can get the word out about my podcast. I immerse myself in that culture, even though I know nothing about it, right? Because all you got to say is, I'm not perfect and I don't know anything about this. That's why I'm here, right? People they want to help you if you come in with that attitude, right? So it's not anything to be scared about. You need to embrace it. Like, yay, I'm new here. I don't know anything, but I'm here and I want to learn everything I can from you. Great. They love that. So don't be afraid to immerse yourself. The next step is consistent application. And I talk about this with my son all the time, my daughter too, but my son really gets this. He really, really gets this about working on something and how consistent action over time is key, right? That's the key to achieving something. Too many people start something and don't stick with it, right? They get excited about something. Okay, I'm going to go, I'm going to learn, I'm going to do it. And they're really on fire for it for a while, but they maybe lose a little bit of fire somewhere along the way. And then it kind of dwindles down. And then they start questioning, why am I doing this? Should I do this? Maybe I don't want to do this. Or maybe if I have to push myself to do this, maybe this isn't my passion, right? And we actually just had this conversation not that long ago, me and my son. It's like, it's hard. What he's doing is hard. He's training, right? He's training in mixed martial arts. It's difficult. It is difficult. Not only do you have physical demands on your body, but you have mental demands because you're constantly strategizing. And he's working with a lot of older people, people who have more experience, what have you. So when he goes to the gym, he comes back spent. He is spent. It is a physical workout. And one day we came home and we were talking in the kitchen and he's like, man, it was hard. It was hard today. Like I started to think on the ride home, he said, I started to think, do I really want to do this? This is really hard. And we had this conversation about, just because you don't feel like doing it that day, don't misinterpret that for your lack of passion, because nobody wants to get up and work their, butt off all day. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to be exhausted. And so we had this conversation about, how when I run marathons, it's not, I'm not enjoying every mile of it. And I'm not enjoying all the training. And yes, it's hard to drag yourself out and run those miles by yourself. It's not easy and it's not pleasurable the whole time. But my goal is to finish the marathon in a certain amount of time. And when I do that, there is no greater feeling. And so we looked at his situation and he said, yeah, like I can't imagine myself doing anything else. And so there it is, right? Just because you're not enjoying every step of the journey does not mean that, oh, I should give this up. It's just like relationships. Not every day of your relationship is a blissful rom-com, right? Does that mean you should give it up? No, there's value there, right? And as you're learning skills along the way. No matter what you're practicing with consistent action over time, you are building skills, whether it's building skills on health or building an actual skill set like plumbing or, whatever, playing an instrument. Every time you set out and do it, you're building that skill level. And eventually, you will have a great toolbox full of skills. So consistent action over time is the key. And nobody achieves anything overnight. And nobody is born talented just right out of the gate with all the skills. That's not how it works. It's consistent action over time. And those that are successful are the ones who can stay in the game the longest. And that's what I've learned this year, really. I mean, I think I've really developed that over the last 5 or 6 years. But this year in particular, it's really, it's really been brought to the forefront that this is consistent action and application over time, and it's just doing the work. So the last and final step of the transformation wheel is teach, which I love this part because There are 3 steps to learning. Over the years, I feel like I learn so much better when I do this. You take in the information, you know, you expose yourself to it, you process it, you practice it yourself, right? And then you teach it to someone else, because that 3rd step is critical to your learning. Once you start teaching someone else, you can truly know that you understand this in a way that you can verbalize it to somebody else and lead somebody else to making that change in their life. So that's the final step of the transformation system. So it's awareness, discover, educate, your vision and goals, belief, focus, immersion, consistent application, and teach. So that was the transformation system. And maybe I went on a little bit too long about that, but I'm just slightly passionate about that because I, I love motivational stuff. Don't get me wrong. I love Tony Robbins. Although he's not, I don't see him as a motivational person, really. I see him more as a teacher. But he definitely inspires. And there's lots of speakers that I find, motivational. And I appreciate that about them. But I have learned that motivation is temporary. It's something that can get you fired up and going, but it doesn't last. It's really a skill set to know how to make a change in your life. That is what you actually need to transform yourself into this goal that you want so badly. You need skills. You need to understand that, maybe you're falling short in one of these sections, and that's simply why you have not achieved your goal. You don't need to go to the reactive emotional side about why you haven't achieved your goal. You just merely need to break it down and look at the components at what it takes to be successful with something and see where you're falling short and top it up, right? I'm not aware enough. I haven't educated myself enough. Maybe I'm not immersing myself enough. Maybe I'm not consistent. And when you do that, you can take your emotion out of it and, act accordingly. And then you get back on track to your goal. So transformation system and the development of that, huge win for 2019. It was really great. And I love watching people go through it and apply it to their lives. Number 4, biggest win of 2019 was Dr. Colleen Holland. Wow. That was pretty awesome. So what I learned from Dr. Colleen Holland was that you actually have to prepare yourself for pregnancy. Wow, who knew? And not just mentally or financially, but physically. Physically prepare yourself for pregnancy. That's not something that I ever heard before. I think preparation for pregnancy, when I was ready to get pregnant, it was going off birth control. That was a big prep. And that's just couldn't be further from the truth. And as we experience more infertility issues and, people are having trouble getting pregnant, this really, I think, was a valuable podcast to a lot of people, and how you should really expect to prepare your body for pregnancy, especially after you have been on birth control for any amount of time. And that there are repercussions to birth control was another big eye-opening thing, because we don't get told that as women when we go in for birth control. We don't get told about the risks. I mean, they're like, oh, there's 0.9%, 0.009% chance that this birth control might not work for you. That's really the only risk anybody ever said to me. They never mentioned that suppressing your hormones has implications. No, nobody ever mentioned that. Nobody mentioned a lot of things, how that birth control can deplete you in minerals. Didn't know that either. Anyhow, Dr. Colleen Holland talked a lot about what you can do to get ready for pregnancy, and that you should get ready for pregnancy. Another big mind-blowing thing was something called the black box drug. Never heard of that either. So that was new. A black box drug is actually a drug that the FDA has put a little black box around its labeling to signal and to represent that this drug should only be used temporarily. So, whoa, when I started looking at black box drugs, and anyone can Google it, you can just Google black box drugs. After I talked to Colleen, I thought, oh, how do I never not heard of this? Is this like some secret conspiracy type, big pharma thing? No, it's on, it's just right there. All you got to do is Google black box drug, and it'll give you a list of all the black box drugs that are out there. And some of them, shockingly, are household names that you definitely probably may be on yourself, or know somebody who's definitely been on it, or someone who's on it now. So that was pretty eye-opening. Black box drugs was that was eye-opening to me. The other thing that she told me, Dr. Colleen Holland, which directly impacted my life, was that NSAIDs can cause hair loss. Did not know that. So like all your typical over-the-counter pain relief, or not prescription, just regular over-the-counter pain relief stuff causes hair loss. So I've been dealing with hair loss since I had my daughter. So 14 years, I had been dealing with hair loss and not really known why, and found out that I was taking a leave on a monthly basis for menstruation pain with my period. And so I was taking it regularly every month, and just losing my hair like crazy. Could not figure out why. So I've been off NSAIDs now for, I think, 3, maybe 4 months entirely. Like I have not had a drop of, it might be longer than that actually, 5 or 6 months maybe. Anyway, for quite some time I have been off of NSAIDs, and my hair's not falling out anymore. In fact, it's growing back. And I actually went to my fabulous hair stylist the other day, and she commented and said that it's definitely growing back. So that was just, confirmation that I'm not crazy and that it actually really is. I've had a few people tell me my hair looks different, but that was really confirmation, because she's been cutting my hair forever. So that was great. So that's a piece of information that I just love to tell people, because it's a simple thing and people don't know it. So again, Colleen Holland was awesome. And I hope to have her back again this year as well. Oh, and the other thing, one more thing that Colleen mentioned that I found really good too, was that when you're in a doctor's office and they're talking about prescriptions, you have that conversation in the office, and there's rarely ever any side effects mentioned. And so when you do go to your doctor, spend part of your time asking about, what kind of implications that this medication could have. Because if you don't directly ask that, they're not going to bring it up, because they, Colleen said that a lot of times they'll think that if they tell you the symptoms that this may, or that may happen, that it's like a placebo effect and then you'll have them. So they don't tell you about them. But, I think I'd rather know. So when the symptom pops up, I can know that it's a direct result of that and not some other ailment that's going on. So that was one thing that she really mentioned too. Is like, hey, ask, is this a black box drug? Is it, what are the implications of taking this before you go off to the pharmacy? Because once you get to the pharmacy, you're a totally different frame of mind, and you're just like, oh yeah, I got to take this pill, whatever. I got the sheet, but the sheet ends up wherever, and you're already done. So when you're in the office, we were talking about that, and I thought that was really valuable information. So number 5, big win was Christy Hall. I love talking to Christy Hall. She is like a diet specialist. She is all about epigenetics, which is a very interesting topic, especially when it comes to diet, because I think that is the future. I think that we are definitely going to be genetically tested in the future to find out what kind of diet is best for us. And why not? I mean, that makes perfect sense to me that we should eat according to our DNA. And so she had some really great information. So epigenetics, one thing she said, epigenetics is 30% of your health. So that's kind of a small number now. I think as the data grows and the field itself grows, I think we'll see a more significant number, but 30% can give you that's a big impact on your health. So that was interesting. She talked about how our bodies are fueled by vitamins, nutrients, and minerals, and what that means for you in terms of epigenetics and how you can plan for your vulnerabilities. So like for her, she was talking about how her mom had breast cancer and there's a history of breast cancer in her family. And so what does that look like for her in terms of her lifestyle and her choices, so she can give herself the best you know environment for herself so that she doesn't turn on those genes for breast cancer. So one thing little nugget she dropped is white button mushrooms. So low estrogen, because the cancers in her family are run by estrogen. They're estrogen dominant cancers. So like for her, she eats a ton of white button mushrooms because they drive down estrogens. She's conscious. She doesn't eat soy. She's conscious of these things because she's had the work done and she knows what the best diet for her genetics are. So I definitely think that's the future. And it was an absolute pleasure talking to her, and just all the information she brought. Soy awareness was a big thing that I got out of that podcast. Was really, you need to check your labels, because soy is hiding in everything. And we see it manifesting in our society in terms of girls menstruating earlier, boys even developing breasts. There's tons of things going on that related to soy, and we don't know how much they shove soy into everything until you really start reading the labels. Kind of like a sugar thing. You don't realize how much sugar is in stuff until you start reading the labels. Soy is the same way, man. You really got to watch soy. They plug it into everything. It's a great filler. So that was huge for me with her. That was a big win for 2019. And I definitely became more aware of soy and what that looks like in my diet. Number 6 was acupuncture. Huge. I had no idea acupuncture, 1, actually worked, or 2, what exactly it did. So I'd heard of acupuncture over the years, but wildly enough, with all the other things I've tried, and I've tried a lot of crazy things, I had not tried acupuncture for some reason. So I searched out a expert in acupuncture, and I found probably the best one in this area. So Debbie Ireland was on the podcast for acupuncture, and she really opened my eyes to more of a Chinese medicine way of thinking when it comes to healing, in terms of the body's dampness, coldness, all of that kind of thing, and opening up pathways through acupuncture. The differences between, Western medicine is now adopting dry needling, which is similar to acupuncture with less training. So they're not bringing in the Chinese medicine aspect of it. They're merely just plugging you with needles, and how different that is, and how that really, I don't know, in a way, I can speak to this because I've actually had this experience. I did dry needling on my neck and arm for a while, years ago. It didn't do anything. And I went for several sessions too. It was just tightness and pain in my left arm. And they sent me to physical therapy at that time. And I tried the dry needling. It did not do anything for me. Acupuncture, I do now on the regular basis, and I find it extremely beneficial. I can actually feel a letdown of the muscles when she puts the pins in. And I come out of my acupuncture appointments feeling much, just a sense of relief and calmness. And I know that over time, as I continue with the treatment, that it's going to be really proactive in my fitness um, routine as far as staying well, staying away from um, injury. It opens things up. So I'm really enjoying it, and I'll report back on it after, I've been going for quite a while, definitely. But I do feel an immediate reaction from the acupuncture, whereas with the dry needling, I did not feel anything. Um, so yeah, a whole new modality opened up to me, which is awesome. I love it. Um, Number 7 was Nicole. Nicole Eckert talked about unhealthy gut. And that was huge too, because that was like, she talked a lot about how it impacts mental health, the gut and mind body connection. Really good stuff, because again, this kind of just reiterates, when I talk to functional medicine practitioners, it just reiterates how much the body is a whole, and that we have to treat it like a whole system. We're not going to just like flush out this area or heal just this area. As we nourish our bodies and mineralize our bodies and give it the nutrients it needs, the whole thing is going to recover for us on a different level. And I have had lots of people who have changed their diets, changed their lifestyle a little bit, report like, I don't even need to dye my hair anymore, because I've mineralized my body and now my hair's not going gray. I know someone who took Fucoidan for quite some time, and no longer needed reading glasses. So it's the repair of the deficiency. There's a deficiency that's causing that symptom, and as that gets healed, or filled up, rather, not healed, but filled up, as that deficiency gets filled up, then the body restores back to homeostasis. So Nicole talked a lot about that, and she talked about how important that is in terms of the gut, and how that's where she starts. A lot of times when she's dealing with clients is, they've got this inflammation, sore joints, whatever, she can always kind of break it down. And a lot of times it comes down to the gut. And we don't necessarily think of that when we're thinking about mental health. So super interesting stuff there. Moving on to another big win of 2019, we had Denise Chenault on the podcast, and she was wonderful, and she had some really valuable information. We were lucky to have her on the podcast, as she studied under so many incredible teachers. But the one thing that stuck out to me, and that Denise really turned me on to, was Byron Katie's work. And on the Naturally Inspired podcast, we talk about natural health, but we talk about the whole body. So we talk about mind, spiritual health, body health. We talk about everything, because it is a system. Your thoughts, your mindset, your lifestyle habits, what you're eating, minerals, all that stuff goes into feeling good. So we had Denise on, and she talked about Byron Katie's work and the 4 questions, which I've really been implementing since I've learned them, and I find them so helpful. So again, Byron Katie's question was the first one you ask yourself. So this is like when you're struggling with something, right? You've had an issue somewhere, you've got some kind of issues bothering you. And instead of stewing on it, these are some really like tactical things that you can do to deal with the issue. So there's 4 questions you need to ask yourself. And the first one is it true? So blank happened. Is it true? That's the first question, because a lot of people get psychic ability, apparently. They think they know what's going on in a certain scenario. And in fact, they may not have all the facts, right? So slowing down and actually asking yourself, is it true, is huge when it comes to how you're going to respond to a situation, how you're going to feel about something. So first question is it true? Second question is, do you know this to be true? Do you know it to be true? Okay. So do you have facts to back up that, yes, this is true, and here are the facts because I saw this, I did this, I have this in my hand, this is a fact. So that's what you're looking for there. third question is, how do I react when I think this thought? So how does my body react? How do I react when I think this thought? So you really break it down. How does this make me feel? What do I think? Does it lead to another thought? Right? And if I'm thinking so and so said something bad about me, now do I stop there, or is my mind going off and I'm inventing new details about this scenario and how they feel about me, or what I did wrong, or what's happening there? How do you react when you think about the thought that's bothering you? And then the fourth question, who would I be without the thought? So if you could take that problem away and just, it doesn't exist in your mind, who am I now? Who am I now? Right? Because we let things, uh, get into ourselves. We absorb them and we stew on them, and then that becomes an insecurity or a confidence problem, or it consumes our thoughts, or we obsess over it, and it keeps us from our goals. It keeps us from our true selves. And this is why Byron Katie has developed this, so that you can go through more often than not, you're going to find it's got nothing to do with you. That that once you go through these 4 questions and you really process the issue, you're going to figure out that it really has very little to do with you, and that more often than not, you're inventing more problems than are actually there, because that's what we do. Because that's what we do as humans. So very powerful. I loved having her on, and she will be on again too. And I know I've said that about other guests, but some of these guests have so much information and so much knowledge to share that it would just be a disservice not to have them on again. So Denise is actually traveling to Tanzania in the next few days to serve in Africa and help women down there with microloans, which is just amazing to me. That's a goal of mine as well. So when she comes back, we're going to get her back on the books for another podcast so she can share with us her experiences, because that's inspiration, and that's what the podcast is all about, is being naturally inspired. Okay, moving on to Dr. Mary Rondeau is her name. And she was fascinating because her clinic, the Wholeness Center, is taking on helping people naturally with mental health. And instead of, a chronic diagnosis that requires medication for the rest of your life, they have a little bit of a different approach. And it really revolves around lifestyle changes and certain medications to use as tools, but temporary, not chronic, for chronic long-term issues. And she was fascinating to talk to. She knew a lot about just kind of the societal pressures that we have, how it's different for kids nowadays versus years ago. And then she talked about her ketamine therapy program too, where that's special K, ketamine's special K. And so it's a hallucinogenic, and what they're using it for is helping to snap people out of depression. So it's very short term, it's like a week long with a few sessions of ketamine, where people get dosed with ketamine, and then they use that to kind of break through the clinical deep depression, and get them able to get back into implementing some lifestyle changes, changing their diet and whatnot. Because with depression, with clinical depression, people get so dark, deep down in that hole that they can't even begin to make lifestyle changes. They're just not there yet. So they're using ketamine as a tool to kind of jerk them out of that state and bring them through to a new level where they can start implementing some changes in their life. So that was hugely educational. And, I would encourage anyone who knows someone or is struggling with PTSD or other mental illnesses to definitely seek out that kind of treatment, rather than settling for a long-term life of medication that may or may not be helpful. So really great information on that one. And then probably one of my favorites was Dr. James Rouse. We had Dr. James Rouse on the podcast, and he has spoke all over the world. He spoke on the same stage as Dr. Oz. He spoke on the same stage as Deepak Chopra and many other magnificent teachers, quite honestly. And Dr. James is a very gifted teacher as well. And he talked about pollinating other people, which I loved. He, that's really his mission in life, is to go around and being a pollinator of people and helping them understand that their purpose is, to be fulfilled in life, to live healthy, to be a light, be a change agent is what he calls it, and live your best life through natural health and taking care of yourself and self-care, and that we can all really impact one another by just pollinating each other with belief in each other, and knowing that being of the human race is enough. Like, this is a gift to be a part of the human race, and that is enough. And you are capable of so many wonderful things, and you are talented, and you are special. And when you see that in someone, that they have a gift, to pollinate that, because we all need that little bit of belief from someone else and encouragement. So Dr. James does live videos, I think, every morning, and you can follow him on Facebook. And he is such a wonderful encourager and a wealth of knowledge about health and wellness. And I'm just so fortunate to be able to call him a friend now. So those are some wonderful things, big wins for 2019. And now we're going to shift gears into regrets of 2019. This was actually harder than I thought, because I am, I don't like dwelling on failures, and I don't even really consider things maybe that didn't work out the way I wanted them to as failures, because every time I've tried something and it didn't work out exactly the way I wanted it to, I really ended up in a better place anyway. There's been houses I wanted to buy. Oh, I really want that house. I want that house. And I tried to force it. I'm going to, put in an offer on that house, and I'm going to do this renovation, and okay, that'll work. Or whenever I really tried to force it, then the deal would like fall apart, and I would really try to put it back together. But it just, wasn't meant to be. And so I think, as we get older, I know as I'm getting older, I realize now that that's a sign to back off a little bit and kind of let the universe do its work. And that's not just like real estate, that's everything, right? That's everything. That's my health. That's training for staff. That's goals. That's all of that. So I find it hard to say, well, I had these failures this year, because really, I did so much learning this year, so much growing and learning. And so they weren't really failures, maybe regrets a little bit. So we'll get started with those. My number one regret for 2019 was holding back, I'd say. When I had this grand idea of starting a podcast, I thought, I'll do it this way, I'll do it that way. And quite honestly, I was, a little bit afraid of, what everybody's afraid of, judgment. Oh, she's not a professional. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's not qualified to do that. How is she doing that? Why is she doing that? Right? All these people come out of the woodwork with their opinion when you put yourself in the arena. And here I am putting myself in the arena on a podcast when everybody can listen to it or access it whenever they want and be all judgy about it. So I definitely held back, especially when I first started. I didn't want to put it out here. I didn't want to put it out there. And I had to really get real with myself and ask myself, why are you not wanting to put it out here or there? Why are you feeling that way? And when I stripped it all down, I realized that it was just fear, right? Fear of being judged, fear of, being accused of being an imposter or whatever, right? But when I really did some insightful work and I started thinking about it, I realized that my intention with this podcast is to help people, right? To empower people, to spread knowledge for people, for the benefit of people. And so nobody can change my intention because that's my intention. So people are free to think what they want, but I know my intention. And as long as I hold that intention, then I should freely express myself however I want to do that. And so that was my regret, because in the beginning, the first few months, I definitely was holding back and was a little bit worried about, this new change. So 2020, no holding back. No holding back, because um, I'm just going to do and say what I think is best and let the chips fall where they may. So no holding back for 2020. Second regret was not reaching out to my dream list. You see, I have a dream list for the podcast. I have specific people that I would love to come on my podcast. And I should have started reaching out to them when I started. And for some reason, because of fear, I held back and didn't want to reach out to them, because God, what would they say? Yes. How nerve-wracking. I'm not ready, right? Would I be good enough to interview these professionals and these people who have way more experience than me? So the number 2 regret was not reaching out to my dream list. And I have started reaching out to my dream list 2020. So stay tuned. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how many of them I can actually convince to come on the podcast and talk to us. So that's number 2 regret. Number 3 regret was probably not getting help personally sooner. And what I mean by that is Jay and I, we live on a farm, right? We have 3 Scottish Highlander cows. We have a llama named Kyle. We have 3 alpacas. We have 20 chickens. We have 2 goats. We have 2 cats. We have 2 dogs. And we have almost 6 acres here on the homestead. So it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of work. We love living this way. This has always been our dream, is to have a space of our own where we don't really have neighbors, and that, we can do what we want on our land, and we can have a garden, and we can kind of live a natural life, right? Where we are in control of our surroundings and whatnot. And we love it, but it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. There's hay to be, we've got to feed the animals with hay. We got to feed them, chickens need water, grain, poop's got to be picked up. There's tumbleweeds out here. There's lots of land, right? There's a lot to do. Plus, we're trying to develop this property too. We're trying to increase its value and all these things. So it's a lot of work. And what I would have done earlier in the year is we've now hired someone to help us around the farm. And oh my God, I don't know why we waited so long to do that, because he's, it's a win-win situation. He's helping us around here with the animals, with the property itself, and he's getting things done, and he's benefiting from it, and we're benefiting from it. And I don't know, because I came from a place where you didn't really hire people to help you. That wasn't the norm for me. You don't hire someone to help you, just do your own work. I've thought that way for a long time. And so this was really a transformation for me to start thinking like, hey, I can do more of what I really love and want to do and enjoy the farm more if I just delegate some of that work out. So that was a valuable lesson for me. 2019, I have begun to delegate more things in my life out to other people rather than jump in there and roll up my sleeves and do it myself. And I can do that, and I still do that, and I will do that from time to time, but I don't have to rely on just myself, which creates a lot of pressure on me, a lot of pressure on Jay. So that's been really wonderful. So my regret there is not doing that sooner. I don't know what I was waiting for with that. So if you're even thinking about that you need a little extra help in your domestic life, I say do it. You're not going to regret it. Not going to regret it. Another regret that I had for 2019, I think, early on, because I think I started in March, but this is like a long time coming, is not lifting weights sooner. I really had internalized a lot of, not wanting to lift weights. I had a belief that I put on muscle really fast, that if I start lifting weights, I'm going to look like a man, I'm going to get bulky. I had all these stories in my head of what I thought weightlifting meant, and none of it was true. None of it. So yeah, definitely have gotten bigger arms, more muscular arms, definitely things, I do have more muscle definition, but do I look like a man? No, I don't look like a man. And it's okay, right? Like I've really come to believe that now, that it is okay to have big muscles. It's okay. This is the, this is my hand of cards. I didn't get the body of a 90-pound, thin running body, right? Which is what I was trying to get. But that's not how I was made. I was made different than that, stocky. And I put on muscle fast. And that's my hand of cards. And so instead of fighting that hand of cards, like I have been for so many years, this year I started embracing that hand of cards. And I really started to have appreciation for my form and for my strength. Like, I am pretty strong, especially for a girl. And that's a good thing, because that's really going to sustain me throughout my life when I get older. That's going to be a huge bonus to me. So not solely a regret, but I think I started in March lifting weights. And so the first 3 months of 2019, I was kind of on the same old run. And I did some calisthenics, like, ab work and stuff like that. But I really never, whenever I had started lifting weights, I immediately backed off after 2 weeks, because I felt my shirts getting tighter and my arms. So I think, well, that's not good, right? I'm trying to get smaller here. But now I'm like, man, my shirts are tight in my arms. Well, that must mean that I'm growing my muscles, and I'm okay with that. So looking back, that was some real regrets for 2019, all of which I feel like I've, tackled and switched them around definitely for 2020. I'm on the right track for that. I'm super excited for the guest list coming up in 2020 and all the things that we're going to tackle in 2020. And I'm just really super excited for the future and what the podcast has in store and all the knowledge that I'm going to be sharing with you. So thank you so much for being a loyal listener. And I really hope and pray that, if you just get one nugget from the Naturally Inspired podcast that you can take with you through your life to make a change or to overcome a challenge, then I really believe that my work here is more than worth it, and that it's so valuable if I can just touch one person. So that's it for today's episode of Naturally Inspired Podcast, and welcome to 2020. Yay! If the Naturally Inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the Naturally Inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.